All right, thank you very much. Very warm welcome to every one of you. Good day. Thank you for taking time off on a Saturday. I was a little skeptical whether there would be a no-show, but thanks to the 10 or 11 of you who have joined us, I think Saturday is not the best of times to do a academic workshop. I try to make it as entertaining and as interactive as possible. I love your cooperation. So when I ask you questions, teachers, professors ask questions. So I would humbly request you to respond appropriately so we make it more relevant. The topic, of course, is reimagining counseling via Education 4.0, and I'll define what Education 4.0 stands for and how the dramatic changes in the academic landscape and the work and job skills landscape is now creating new kinds of challenges as well as new kinds of opportunities. And that, I think, is the crux of how I'd like to deal with it. So I'm going to spend some time with you, which for the next 1 hour and probably 50 minutes or 45 minutes if possible, we'll try to take you on a small journey, which at two levels can help you. One, at a very personal level. So I'm going to share with you the latest research from neuroscience, from biology, from behavioral sciences, and how these latest findings can actually impact us to become better professionals and, more importantly, better human beings. So at an individual level, I'm sure there are lots of insights that you can take back, which you can apply. Now, having said that, obviously the role is for you to interact with. I also presume there are a couple of teachers here. So again, when you're interacting with your students as counselors, as teachers, obviously many of these things, in fact, almost all of these ideas can be translated into applications for the student community as well. So without much ado, let me quickly run you through a short presentation that I have. And I'll just put that across. Can you see my screen?
Yes, sir.
All right, perfect. Right, so reimagining counseling via Education 4.0 in the post-pandemic era. Where are we now? If you look at the last 2 years, we have some very interesting terms: the new normal, the post-pandemic, so on and so forth. Yes, it has created new kinds of challenges, new kinds of opportunities, new kinds of learnings. From COVID-19 to Delta to Omicron to IHU, next. We don't know, right? It keeps chasing us with new kinds of variants, mutations. With all the advances in biology and medicine, we still haven't fathomed. But having said that, yes, through collaborative effort, and I'll come back to that in a minute, we have been able to address the pandemic. So we have a million questions. What's going to be the future of work? What's going to be the future of the economy, the future of education, the future of teaching and learning, the future of work and jobs and skills? Questions, and more questions. But amidst all this doom and gloom, I think there have been fascinating insights on human collaboration, human cooperation, and human contribution. Now, many of you would know that the current vaccines that have come out in almost, within a year are record-breaking historical breakthroughs from the vaccination innovation cycle. Usually it takes about 3 to 4 years before a particular product hits the market. But here we see, due to fantastic collaborations between institutions and individuals across, we were able to see the light of these different vaccinations, which to a large extent created what virologists would like to call herd immunity. And thankfully, I think we're coming back to a better phase. But while we were all heaving a sigh of relief by January, February 2022, we suddenly had somebody deciding to go and attack a neighboring country. Well, the politics, the economics, the ethics, we don't have time to discuss it. But yes, it did happen. So created another set of uncertainties, another set of challenges. But amidst all this, I'd like to share a big picture perspective. And yes, before we do that, I'd like to ask you a very important question. And I'll contextualize the question. So how do we look at our roles as counselors? And if you're probably a teacher, yes, as a teacher, you also play an important role in guiding the destinies and destinations of these students. A few years back, the leading hospitality chain in the city of California invited its housekeepers. Housekeepers are the people who keep the rooms clean and who also, are ones who actually clean toilets for a living. How do you get them to reimagine their roles, the role of a housekeeper? And so the CEO prompted a workshop like this and then asked them, if you have to reframe and rename your role as a housekeeper, what would that be? And there were some fascinating insights that came out of that. One was the clutter busters. The other was peace of mind police. And the third one was a mom away from home, right? So friends, the big message is that when I'm asking you this question, I don't want you to tell me a traditional, a standard refrain saying, okay, counselor's job is to advise, to guide. I want you to think a little bigger, and I want you to put your answers either on the chat, all right? Or you can also look at, unmuting yourself and talking to me. Let's spend a couple of minutes trying to reimagine our roles, because I think answering that question is going to be very significant. And I'm sure if you're a teacher, you also play that role, like a lot of us as counselors to our students, and of course to our parents as well. Anybody? How do you redefine or reframe your role as a counselor? Go ahead, I'm listening. I'm watching the chat box. So you have to speak to me. Yes. Mythbusters. Wow, I love that. Thanks, Ms. Shana. That's a beautiful one. Mythbusters. Yeah, that's our job. And I would, again, try to attempt to bust a number of myths today. Good one. Anybody else? Relationship mentors. Wow, that's beautiful. Mythbusters, relationship mentors. Any other? Any other? Very profound, by the way. So thanks to Ms. Shahana and Ms. Sindhu. Anybody else? I'll take another two more and then I'll move on. Okay? More holistic. Okay. Holistic developers, Srimanti says. Okay? More holistic development for kids. Right? Okay? One more. Come on, friends. From Mythbusters to relationship mentors. Trust me, this exercise we are doing. Okay, beautiful. Peacemakers. Wow, that's beautiful. Peacemakers. Yeah, right. Thank you very much. The purpose behind, there's a method in the madness, as they say. There is a purpose behind asking you to do it. This is a very simple neurological technique called reframing. When you reframe your perspectives, your thought process changes. When your thought process changes, your actions and behaviors change. When your actions and behaviors change, your habits and character change. When your habits and character change, your destiny and destinations change, and that in turn will impact your stakeholders. So yes, thank you very much for the four of you who gave those very profound answers. Let me move on. So amidst all of this doom and gloom and uncertainty, we call this world a VUCA world: volatile, uncertain, complex, and ambiguous. Amidst all this ambiguity and complexity and uncertainty and volatility, there's always streams and strings of hope. As we will see in this beautiful video, watch it, and then we'll continue.
It's interesting that the things we...
Sorry.
cherish most are the same things we walk right by. They become so intertwined in the status quo that ultimately it becomes impossible to tell them apart from our day-to-day. That is, impossible until things change. Because as it turns out, that thing we call life, it has a say. There's a saying, you never really know what you have until it's gone. Sometimes it takes the most abrasive of reminders, the harshest of times, to help us recapture that perspective, to lift us up and show us what we had previously failed to see. And while our darkest moments test our strength, they push our boundaries, even transform our reality, they can also be the bridge that leads us exactly where we need to be. They remind us that sometimes it's not about how we spend our time, but who we spend it with. That quiet brings clarity, and the world can spin so fast that we forget to think about our place within it. It reminds us how humanity is bigger than the sum of its parts, and it takes just as much energy to build up as it does to tear down. It reminds us that no matter where we live, what we speak, or who we pray to, we're not so different after all. It reminds us that there is so much more good in this world than evil, so much more love than hate, and so much promise for tomorrow. Someday we'll look back on this moment with the lessons we've learned, the hardships we've faced, and we will be reminded of the miracle that is the human spirit, unwavering in its resolve, unbreakable at its foundation, stronger than we could ever comprehend. See, sometimes it's hard to look around and find a reason to be optimistic, to understand or comprehend why. But what we'll find is that if we look hard enough, immersed in the uncertainty, the disruption, and in some cases, the tragedy, there's something to be gained. A tiny candle flickering in the night that will eventually grow to light our way. Because that road to tomorrow is paved with hope. There are pages unwritten, stories untold, and a new chapter to begin.
And that positive note is where we help those new chapters to be written, those new pages to be written as part of history. And I think in these absolutely exciting and incredible times, each one of us have an amazing role to play in terms of how we shape the destinies of our people. I want to set a context, rather three contexts in terms of how we can take this forward, because once we get this, I've developed a simple model for us to take action from a behavioral perspective, which is called the ACDA model. It starts with awareness, moves on to choices, decisions, and actions. Awareness, choices, decisions, and action. So what I'm going to do today is give you awareness of certain things that are happening around us, which as a counselor, as a teacher, can help you to share that same good news, scientifically validated, scientifically researched, with your stakeholders, and then see the kind of impact it can have on them. Because currently, for the last 2 years, you've seen so much of anxiety and uncertainty among students as well as parents. Not just the questions, but in terms of even being alone, being depressed, being worried. And they say the percentage of depression has gone up by humongous percentages during the last 2 years. And that's because we are social creatures. We need to connect with each other. And since that was not given an opportunity in the last 2 years for the right reasons, they found themselves anxious and probably distracted with a lot of meaningless pursuits. So the first context, I'm going to ask you a question. The question is very simple. We all have a brain. The question is, what percentage of the brain do we actually use? What percentage of the brain do we actually use? You can put your answers on chat, just like you did earlier. The percentage of the brain. Okay, Srimanti says 100. Anybody else? Sindhu says 7%. I want more people to participate. I'm only seeing the ones who are actively participating also answering. Yes. We'll come back to that, Srimanti. Just give me a minute. Shahana says 100%. I want more people. Yeah. Okay. I have a new name. Ariba. Good. Thank you, Ms. Ariba. 1%. 1%. Pallavi says, Ariba says 7 to 10%. Okay. Lovely. Anybody else? I want more names, more new people participating. Megan, thank you very much, Ms. Megan. 8 to 10%. Okay. We'll take a couple more. Go ahead. It's just a numbers game, guess game. So go ahead, give me some figure. At least one more. We have, I think, 13 people. So we have only 5 answers. Go on, friends. Give me an answer. One more. People are scared now. Teachers and counselors should never be scared. Anxiety. All right. I'm going to ask this question to Ms. Okay, Ms. Sandhya says she had some technical issues. No worries. Okay. Fine, ma'am. The question is, you can attempt it. What percentage of our brain do we actually use? So you can now answer that question now. Would you want to answer that? All right. I'm going to ask this question again to Ms. Srimanti and probably Ms. Shahana as well. Would you like to tell me, Ms. Srimanti, how did you arrive at the 100%?
See, the brain is the most complex organ. And throughout the entire day, we have been we do multitasking, we do a lot of things which everything involves the brain, right? Sure. It can't happen that only 1% we use and the rest is just left out of nowhere. Whether it's thinking, decision making, whether it's seeing something, whether it's hearing something, every activity that we do involves it. Because that's why it's called the CPU of the entire human soul.
Fantastic. Thank you very much. That was an awesome answer. Ms. Shahana, would you like to also add to what Ms. Srimanti said?
I think it's very similar to what Srimanti said.
Yeah.
From the way we use our senses to when we are sleeping, when we are managing stress or multitasking, we are always busy and always engaged.
Absolutely.
So that's how we are using it all the time.
Thank you very much, both of you. And thank you for hitting the nail on its head. The rest of us are wondering, where did this 100% come from? In the last 2 decades, there have been some tremendous amount of research in the field of neuroscience. In fact, we call them the decades of the brain. And little by little, we are unraveling the fascinating mysteries of this marvelous, complex organ called the human brain. But before I get on to that, 2 thoughts that I wanted to pick from both Ms. Srimanti and Ms. Shahana. Both use the word multitasking. And we said that counselors are myth busters. So the first myth that we'll burst is that multitasking, according to scientific research, does not work. So multitasking is the wrong concept, a wrong term. So you can Google this later after the session is over. There's no multitaskers. There are a small percentage of people in the 7.5 billion population of this planet who are supertaskers. They are endowed by God's grace to do some amazing feats together, but most of us come under the normal average. So multitasking does not really work according to the latest neuroscience research. The second word that Ms. Shrimanti used in terms of a CPU, well, the brain is much more complex, as I will prove to you in a moment, than just a central processing unit of a computer. Yes, if you're analogous to a computer, it can be analogous, but it cannot, replicate. The computer can't really replicate the human brain. Let me explain this to you. This was just to, create that sense of, this is a big false narrative given by the media, given by, stories, but this is not real. The real is we all use, and they both said very perfectly that when we're using our senses, we are actually using 100% of our brains. That's the reality. Now, the question is, how do we actually know this? Well, if you look at the different dimensions of what we do with our brain, the cognitive brain, the feeling brain, the sensing brain, so on and so forth, everything that we do, if you're hearing what you're hearing and seeing what you're seeing and sensing what you're sensing, you're actually using 100% of your brain. That's number one. Number two, which is equally more important, is that we all, are, let's say, overwhelmed by the hype on artificial intelligence and robotics and all these so-called gizmos, technological gizmos and contraptions. The reality is that the world's fastest supercomputer is no match to the God-given brain that we all have. And let me validate that statement. So this on my left side is the Tianhe 2, which is the Chinese supercomputer according to last year's supercomputing race, which does calculations of 54.902 petaflops. And a petaflop is 1,000 trillion per second. And an exaflop, which is in your human brain and my human brain, is a billion, which is more complex, more sophisticated, and faster than the petaflops. So if you are a computer science professional, you would know that an exaflop is much larger than a petaflop. So friends, the first myth that we need to break with our students is that we need to tell them that they have been endowed with an absolutely amazing God-given organism. In fact, this is the most complex, the most sophisticated system in the entire universe, right? So we need to keep that in mind. First myth gets busted. Of course, we call it the automatic brain, which is the, the brain stem, and then the mammalian brain, which is the emotions and habits, and the rational brain, that's abstractions and decisions. That's why all our thinking, feeling, and doing are part of this triune brain that we call it. The second one, we have all heard this concept of survival of the fittest. But I'm saying we not only survived, but we thrived. So I'd like you to define what thrive means, and then we will see how we thrived. Anybody who would like to define what thrive stands for? What is thrive? Anybody? What does thrive mean? You can unmute yourself, speak to me, or you can put it on chat. What does the word thrive actually mean? Because it's a very important word, and I want us to really get it clear. Go ahead. Thrive. Yeah, I have a couple of answers. Super. Develop. Ms. Annette says flourish. That was the word I was looking for. Develop, grow, but flourish is the most perfect word for it. Thank you, Ms. Annette. Flourish, prosper. Oh, wow. Beautiful. So thriving is flourishing and prospering. Super. And developing and growing. Now the question, how have human beings thrived? Or how have human beings flourished, developed, and prospered? Anybody? How have we prospered? How have we flourished as a community, as a humanity? Anybody? Couple of answers. How do we continue to flourish? I say that in context. Even in 2020, 2021, 2022, we continue to flourish. And I'll validate the statement in a moment. Anybody? Please. How did humanity flourish? Or how does it continue to flourish? No answers? Okay, I'm going to give the answer to you, right? The reason we flourished, and this is again a big myth that's going to be busted, is, okay, I had an answer. Let me check that. Okay, reflecting on our practices. Okay, thank you, Ms. Megan. It's the 3 C's as we call: collaboration, cooperation, and contribution. This is counterintuitive because we normally have been, given a false narrative of survival of the fittest, right? Now that has been disproved today by and large. I'll give you some research evidences to prove this. Yeah, we as a community, humanity at large, I shared with you the vaccine story, the COVID-19 vaccine story. It's a classic example of cooperation, collaboration, and contribution. Now, over years, we've realized that human beings by nature are endowed with compassion. So that's another C for you. Now, this is again counterintuitive, but I'm going to contextualize it. All of you are familiar with the United Arab Emirates. Let's visualize you are. Ma'am, may I request you, Ms. Dr. Bindu, to kindly unmute yourself, ma'am? Ms. Bindu, thank you very much. Yeah. All right, so you're walking on Sheikh Zayed Road. And, Dubai is home to 206 nationalities. You're walking on Sheikh Zayed Road during the, let's say, winter months, so it's pleasant to walk. While you're walking, you see an abject stranger swooning and falling in front of you. Okay? The question to you is, what would be your immediate reaction? Can someone request Ms. I think it was Ms. Bindu who's got her mic on. Yeah. Yep. What would be your immediate reaction to the person falling in front of you? Quick. Suddenly there's a lull. Go ahead, friends. I want some answers. What would you do if somebody fell down in front of you? Because there's a science that I'd like to bring in. Go ahead. I'm not helping him out. Okay. Only Ms. Megan is participating. Why do we go and help him or her to get up? Why should we do that? That's an abject stranger. Where does that help come from? Ms. Annette says you'd rush to pick him up. Okay. Rush. Okay. So we don't even look what nationality they belong to, right? What religion they belong to, what gender they are from. We don't look at all that. We just go and spontaneously help them. Now the question is, where did this thought come from? Okay, let's say, for example, we'll take the Russia-Ukraine, conflict. If probably an Ukrainian sees a Russian falling, I don't think he's going to shoot him, right? The reason is because there's the presence of a certain set of neurons called mirror neurons. So if you're making notes, you can make a note of it. Mirror neurons. Mirror neurons are a set of neurons embedded in each one of us, embedded biologically by God Almighty. So that's why we have that compassion, that empathy, and the capacity to love. So obviously there's a question that's lingering in your mind. So why are we fighting? Why is Putin fighting Ukraine? But that has nothing to do with our innate human nature. What is happening there is our narrow parochial systems, our twisted values and belief systems are the ones that make us fight. And the power and the obsession towards power and control are the things that are making us do it. By nature, we are good people. If you don't believe me, I'm going to give you a few resources. You can mull over them. This was the one which was in 2005. Stephen Klein, award-winning anthropologist, wrote about survival of the nicest. And he validates through anthropological, biological, and historical evidence how altruism actually made us human and why it pays to get along. More recently, last year, in the midst of the pandemic, this is now not just a Sunday Times, it's a landmark worldwide bestseller. In fact, I'd strongly recommend those of you having a habit of reading, to get this book and read it, Humankind. This is award-winning Dutch historian Rutger Bregman, and he proves categorically that the entire history of humanity is built on kindness and compassion. There's some absolutely amazing, mind-blowing stories in that book, and validated by cutting-edge science, that actually proves that this is what makes us human. More recently, again last year, professors from Harvard University, Brian Hare and Vanessa Wood, actually proved to us, again, through valid biological research, survival of the friendliest. So I think the second myth that we need to break is the power of coming together. How does this matter? It matters because we need to create these communities of practice, communities of excellence, communities of togetherness. Teachers, parents, students. It's not just the PTAs. It's not just the monthly or the quarterly teachers meeting, parent teachers meeting. I think it goes much beyond that, where we create a community of well-wishers working towards each other's good, built on compassion, love, and empathy. As I said, this is biologically proven today. This is what we see here. They don't have any inhibitions. They don't look at race or gender or religion. They are together. And I think we need to get that message across to our children. Third one is resilience, the innate. And later I will share with you the human side or the scientific side of resilience. But this is more to give you a context so that you understand this. I want as many people of you to answer this question. There are a list of companies here. Many of you will be familiar with these names, from GE to HP to Microsoft to Google, Apple, eBay. Then you have CNN, MTV, FedEx, Burger King, AirAsia, and Airbnb. The question to all of you is, there's one thing common among all of these companies. What would that one thing be? Hazard a guess. What is that one thing common among all of these companies? Go ahead, you can unmute, speak. It's going to be a workshop, okay? A workshop is not a one-way process, so please cooperate with me. Thank you. Yes. Give me any answer. There are no wrong answers in life. Yes, we have one answer. And okay, teamwork, great one. Ms. Bhavna says employees, good one. What else? Teamwork, employees. Can we have another answer? Teamwork, employees. Okay, you're going to be delighted by the answer I'm going to give you. Thank you very much. Oh, customer. Ms. Sandhya says customer. And you can put it to everyone, ma'am, so that everybody hears your answer or sees your answer. Right. The one thing common among all of these companies is each one of them was started in the middle of a recession. I want this truth to sink into your mind. Every one of these companies was started in the middle of a recession. Probably tells you something about the human spirit. It tells you about the spirit of resilience. It tells you that human beings become much more innovative and dynamic when, we call it the cornered cat. We get much more dynamic during those times. And this is validated again by research. There's a professor called Schumpeter. And Professor Schumpeter has spent his entire life studying catastrophes, calamities, and disasters. And every time there's been a calamity, catastrophe, or disaster, every time mankind has risen beyond our imagination, right? This is just an indicative list. There are many more such stories. More recently, let me give you the Indian story. A unicorn, for those of us who may not know, is a company that has a $1 billion valuation. And a unicorn normally happens created by youngsters, 20 to 30 years old, and they, suddenly boom in the market and create some absolutely amazing companies. So from Flipkart in 2012 to Mu Sigma in 2013, just fast forward 2020, 2021, look at the number of unicorns in 2020 and 2021. In the middle of the pandemic, right in the middle, you had the largest number of unicorns happening. And as we speak, 2022, the unicorn story continues. So friends, again, the big message is that when these challenges come, resilience, the ability to achieve beyond imagination is the message we need to share. So I've shared 3 myths: that we have an awesome God-given brain, that we work together as a community and cooperate, collaborate, and contribute to each other's well-being. And the third thing that we need to share with our students is that, yes, these are tough times, but these are the times when we find incredible opportunities. So I think that's the message that you need to give in these 3 shifting contexts. And I hope and pray that each one of you take this message back to your students and say, hey, you know what? Yes, these are tough times, but you have an awesome God-given brain. You can work together and we can create a better world for all of us. And see, this is the proof of the matter. And I will share this presentation with you so you can actually validate this if you want to share it with your students and parents. So how do we reimagine the future? The future of education. Where is it going? Yesterday, I was part of a global conference on education, higher education. So one of the key things that we spoke about or discussed was, how is education going to move across from conventional face-to-face interactions to hybrid versions to technology interventions? But behind all that, again, let's not forget we're human and how human could we interact even on a digital space. Now with the birth of metaverse, which has already been there, but now it's coming in a much bigger way with the Web 3.0, how can we envisage the future of education? Watch this.
The world is experiencing a pretty dramatic skills gap. More than 50% of US college graduates are unemployed or underemployed a year after they graduate.
We have a real problem today with the relevance of the experience for many of our students. It's not directly tied to the learner's professional and personal aspirations.
There are millions of children in school, but they're not learning.
One of the biggest opportunities in education over the next 5 to 10 years is the changes in delivery that we've seen, where every individual will be able to access individualized education for them without relying on traditional institutions. So really it's up to the individual to frame their own education now.
The student too often is the last constituent that's taken into account. There's such a strong emphasis on teaching to the test that some of these softer skills, which are foundational for success on the test, are seen as somehow less important.
If we look at the skills gap, the kinds of things that employers are looking for is the ability to collaborate. Many technologies are meant to teach using a cognitive approach. Increasingly, we're seeing technologies that also focus on socio-emotional skills.
These are really different character-based skills and traits that are oftentimes hard to quantify. The New Vision for Education project really is helping to shine a light on the soft skills that are needed for development of students across the world, to figure out how these skills are measured, how they're taught, and different ways we can use technology to develop them.
There's part of knowledge that you cannot actually put in digital format because it will be part of the learning process of meeting someone. And that part will be the one that will differentiate you from other people.
Children learn better when they learn with a peer with whom they're friends. I'm interested in technology that makes a bond with students and that uses that social bond to improve the educational atmosphere.
There's narrative, there's multimedia, there are interactive capabilities, there's assessment.
The question today is, how do we use all this available knowledge to develop new ventures and to create new jobs? What we are doing now in Brazil is going to the human resource department, the companies, so we can matchmaking with the course that we provide, like how to work in groups, creativity, project management, soft skills.
What we'd really like to see in the future is a change not just from the employer, but from almost every stakeholder in education, where it's not the degree or where the knowledge was obtained that matters, but it's the skill level and those particular skills that were obtained and the way that students showed those skills.
It will require the collaboration and partnership by all the stakeholders. That only is possible with a very powerful leadership.
Enabling more students to go through higher education is just a social benefit that's incredibly important.
The new generation will be much smarter.
So as you saw in that video, it's not just about technical skills. It's how you become smarter. In fact, I wouldn't even want to call those soft skills anymore. I'd like to call them smart skills and life skills. And the future would be a beautiful combination of technical skills combined with human life and smart skills. I think that's a big message that you as counselors and teachers have to give across. Because what's happened over the last few years, or decades rather, is an overhyped narrative in terms of technology. Yes, technology is a great opportunity. It does exponential growth in more ways than one. But let's remember, we are human, and we need to teach those human values to our students and our other stakeholders. So that's the big message that came out here. We do live in exponential times where things are growing faster than we can imagine. Now, if you look at a company, if you take a small company, probably in the 1950s or 60s, it would take almost about 3 to 4 decades before it becomes $1 billion company. And here I showed you unicorns coming up from 3 to 5 years and become $1 billion ventures. So the exponential growth of technology has created these exponential opportunities. But I'd also like to remind us as humans, there's also an exponential growth of human ideas. And that, I think, is the big message that needs to come out. Look at how human intelligence has worked to create these beautiful, contraptions in terms of connecting different industries with different technologies. And these technologies, we also call them combinatorial, which means you're combining different technologies with different industries, and that's how the whole thing works. And because of this, there is a tremendous amount of opportunities that are likely to happen in the near future. And these are the ideas that we need to share with our students, that the world is not as rotten as it is portrayed. Now, here's a very important word of caution and a word of advice. Now, why do our students feel so anxious? Why are they so depressed? Why are they unhappy? Why are they lonely? Of course, the social dimension is very important, but I think there's a very dirty 5-lettered word. Would somebody like to guess what that dirty 5-lettered word is? Anybody who wants to hazard a guess what it is? A 5-lettered word. What do you think is that's influencing us so badly, so terribly? Where do our choices, our decisions come from? Go ahead. Super. Thank you, Ms. Bigot. Thank you very much. That's the worst word. Okay, with due respect to those of you who are in media. Media by itself is not a bad word, but the way media is being used, the way media is used to manipulate minds and hearts is what's happening. It's a very, very construed, very distorted narrative that comes on mainstream media. So you need to be extremely cautious. You also need to sensitize our students where they get their media information. If it comes from the right sources, there are plenty of good sources, right sources. I think that's very critical for us. And so I think that is another message. The media discipline that all of us need to have as adults, as students, is another critical dimension, because our thoughts could be influenced by the wrong kind of media that comes across. So networks, not just computer networks, not just intelligence networks, but human networks. For example, the collaborations that took place during the pandemic were not just intelligent technology networks, but human beings networking with each other to create these awesome paradigm shifts. Business as usual is dead, and education as usual is the past. So I think we need to shift our mindsets. We need to shift our perspectives. We need to shift our vision towards how the future of education can pan out in the post-COVID era. Our world has changed. For the right and the wrong reasons, it's changed. Our behaviors, our feelings, our thoughts, our interactions, the way we work, the way we study, the way we interact, have all become very different. And it's not going to come back. It's not going to be the old norm, as we call it. The new norm is now not just a buzzword, it's a reality. It's a new reality. So, in these uncertain times, what we call times of turbulence, it's not the turbulence itself, but to act with yesterday's logic. You want to solve today's problems, you don't do it with yesterday's solutions, which is what Albert Einstein said many years back. There was Peter Drucker here, who said, to act with yesterday's logic will be the greatest impediment to progress and development. So what we need today is to rediscover rediscover the power of the human potential. And I'm going to share many more insights in terms of how this potential can be tapped into. We co-create, that's the power of collaboration, the power of cooperation. And you saw that on that World Economic Forum video as well. The ability to work in teams, to collaborate, that's going to be a huge, huge priority. And in many cases, it will be remote, hybrid scenarios. So how do we prepare our students to still enjoy the power of connect and community, remaining in remote places, and obviously to reimagine, which is redreaming the whole concept of tomorrow's logic. So the future of education and counseling is intertwined with what we call the future of work. Because at the end of the day, we prepare our students to work or to provide work. What do I mean by this? They are prepared to be job seekers, which at a personal level, I'm not too keen on. I would prefer to have them as job creators. And if you see the new mindset of our youngsters, the millennials, the Y generation, the Z generation, you're finding a huge shift in their perspectives about life and jobs and work. Most of them would like to do multiple tasks, the gig economy. Most of them would like to work for different people at different times. Most of them would also like to start their own startups, which can pretty much become unicorns and unicorns. All triggered by this one thing called the fourth industrial revolution, which is about connectivity. Connectivity of humans, connectivity of machines, connectivity of technologies. We have something called the Internet of Everything. We used to call it IoT, but now it's IoE. Billions of accessories connecting with each other, creating a huge opportunity. I work with a number of entities in countries like Nigeria, Singapore, India. Let me tell you, the youngsters are by far, revolutionizing the way technology connects with humans. The question is, are we preparing them for that kind of a world where both combining human and technical skills are important? This is a very important diagram from the World Economic Forum last year, and I would encourage all counselors and teachers to constantly refer to this area. You can subscribe free of cost to the World Economic Forum. There are of course paid subscriptions, but most of it is free. And you will get updates, and you will realize, if you look at it carefully, the blue ones are all what we call problem-solving skills. The black ones, technology use, monitoring and control, technology design and programming, are the tech part. The yellow one is working with people. And so if you look at that, we are talking about self-management, the green ones. We are talking about problem-solving, which is a human dimension. And we're talking about working with people. So friends, again, the big message that we need to give our students is that it is a beautiful balance between technical and human skills, life skills. That's a message that we need to give out loud and clear. This is as of 2021, the top 10 skills for 2025, based on research and interviews from tens of thousands of people leading organizations across the world, public, private, and NGOs. So from analytical thinking to active learning and learning strategies, complex problem solving, critical thinking and analysis, creativity, originality, initiative, leadership and social influence, technology use, technology design, resilience, stress tolerance and flexibility, reasoning, problem solving, and ideation. I would strongly recommend you to probably remember this and ensure that our students are sensitized, our parents are sensitized to these critical skills. I'll also leave the last 15 minutes for any question answers you might have on these areas. So let's continue. I have a fascinating video now from a top human tech expert, a gentleman called Gerd Leonard. Watch this carefully, and that's where the future of counseling, the future of education, the future of work leads us to.
Once upon a time, business as usual was often good enough. No more. Where we are going, good enough is dead. In a world where everything is connected, where everything is equally excellent, Where performance is reaching perfection, there's only one space left to innovate in: you. Right now, you are a central point in the raging tornado of change fueled by digitization, mobilization, augmentation, disintermediation, automation. Well, the list goes on. Science fiction is becoming science fact. Think about self-driving cars or computers that can learn and think. The way we work will never be the same. The skills we need will be dramatically different. Winning or losing are now happening faster than ever before. So what's your response? How will you discover new opportunities in one of the most transformational times in human history? Are you driving change, or are you being driven by it? Disruption has become the new normal. With change, it's always gradually, then suddenly, well, things really have stopped happening gradually. This change is exponential. Everything that used to be dumb and disconnected is now wired and intelligent. Cars, cities, ports, farms, even our bodies will be wired with sensors and will talk to each other. These game changers are also combinatorial. They amplify each other, creating a perfect storm of change. Quantum computing fuels big data. The Internet of Things fuels artificial intelligence and deep learning, which fuels robotics. However, anything that cannot be digitized or automated will become extremely valuable. Human-only traits such as creativity, imagination, intuition, emotion, and ethics will be even more important in the future, because machines are very good at simulating, but not at being. Yes, robots and software will do some of our work, but this will allow us to focus on things that cannot be automated. To imagine change squared, you've got to start engaging more with what might be, not just with what is. Immerse yourself in the immediate future, 5 to 7 years out from today. We need to go beyond technology and data to reach human insights and wisdom. Technology represents the how of change, but humans represent the why. The future is about holistic business model. The opportunity is to be liquid, to learn just in time, not just in case, not single improvements, but complete transformations, not individual systems, but new ecosystems. Humanity is where true and lasting value is created. We will engage, relate, and buy things because of the experiences they provide, because of their transformative power. The future doesn't just happen. The future gets happened. The new way to work is to embrace technology, but not to become it. The future is in technology, yet the bigger future lies in transcending it. Let's live and lead from here.
So that's the big message, that yes, technology, but we need to know how to overcome or not get overwhelmed by it, but to transcend it. Technology as human with human wisdom. So this brings us to the question, what does this mean for education and for counselors, educators and counselors? Well, we have to look at it from the changing world around, the uncertainties, the complexities, the volatilities, and the ambiguities. Welcome to the world of Education 4.0. What does this represent? It means that education has taken a paradigm shift. It's anywhere, anytime. Some of you would know that Google, Elon Musk, and other enterprises are now trying to cover the entire world with internet. In the next 3 to 5 years, that's the next revolution that's happening, which means you could reach out to the remotest of remote places across the world and ensure that everybody has a decent enough connection to connect, to learn. You don't need the brick and mortar edifices anymore to actually reach out to rural parts of the world. That's a revolution by itself. It's becoming more personalized. At SP Jain, for example, at our undergraduate program, we have a mobile app that tracks every student's learning capabilities. It assesses how they're doing it, where they are weak, and once the app identifies that, it also provides them inputs on how they can improve on those particular areas. It happens on an ongoing basis. with a lot of encouragement, both digital and of course the personal interventions of the faculty members. It's flexible delivery related to the anytime, anywhere, hybrid versions. We also have, some of you may be familiar with a technology called engaged learning online, which is absolutely world-beating because it reaches out to people across the world. I have students who are from Sydney at the same time, Singapore, Indonesia on one side, then France and India. Then you also have people from South America, North America. Imagine a global class where you could do this because of the flexible delivery that's possible. Peers and mentors, the whole community of learners need not necessarily be confined to the four walls. In fact, we say break those walls. Many years back, there was a famous Pink Floyd song that said, we don't need any more walls. So I think we've now come to that reality that we don't need. It's a borderless world. It's a boundaryless world. What Parag Khanna, global strategist, would call connectography. We connected. So a global community of peers and mentors, not impossible. It's just a mindset shift that we need to have to be open to these ideas. It's not why and where. It's actually why and where, not what and how. Because that's already a given. It's there. In a Googleized world, you have the what and the how. What we need is the why and where. Okay, Ms. Ariba, what I would suggest is, Joyce, could you write to her and ask her to rejoin? Joyce? Right. Okay, then practical applications. Because now theory needs to translate into applications. So how are we doing those assignments? I think we should move away from examination. See there, my last one is about evaluations, not examinations. Because examinations test your memory. You don't need that. That memory is no longer relevant because everything that you need as information is available to us. Yeah. So that's the thing that you need to. Then it's modular and project based. So the assignments, the learning that we give is completely modular and they can, lead on. Some of you may have heard of nano degrees. Some of you heard of micro credentials. Many of you, I'm sure, are familiar with MOOCs. But there's so many ways for which these things can work out. And at the end of the day, the ownership of the learning is now with the student. I may not have time to show you the video, but there's a very interesting experiment done by a professor called Sugata Mitra. And Sugata Mitra's world-famous experiment is called the hole in the wall. He's a professor of Indian origin who was working in the UK. And at that time, in the 1999 or 98, he came to India and went to the rural parts of Delhi. Delhi also has the back parts, which are very, underdeveloped or developing. He goes there and he goes to a municipal village and creates a hole in the municipal office. In that hole, he fixes a computer. And that computer is a touchscreen computer. And Professor just has a few cameras to observe it. You can watch this video on YouTube. It's called The Hole in the Wall. And his TED Talk is watched more than 15 million times. So the camera is panning it. And these little kids, rural kids who come across, most of them are illiterate. Some of them are semi-literate. Okay, they don't even have basics on computing. But guess what? In 6 weeks flat, these little children, ranging from 5 to 12 years old, were able to not only use the computer. Nobody taught them, no teachers, right? No computer science teachers, no math teachers, no one. They just started fiddling around learning. And this is the science of what we call self-directed learning. So I think we also, as teachers and mentors, need to have a paradigm shift in our thought process that students have the capability. There's a lot of spoon feeding that happens, which may be redundant and irrelevant. We might need to be mentors and guides. Oh, thanks, Joyce, for putting that, the hole in the wall. So Joyce has already put that for you. Thanks, Joyce. Super. But don't get distracted and watch it now, watch it later. Yeah. So that's the thing. So the ownership can be shifted to students. And the last most important thing, I believe, is evaluation, not examination. A couple of quick things on brains. Okay, so we know this. Exercise has a direct correlation with brain development. The more we do it, the more oxygen pumps into our blood system, and the more blood in our system, the more oxygen in our system, our brains become much more clearer. We have a survival instinct. So as a result, that's where the resilience comes. That's where the ability to fight back comes in. We need to get this message out. We are wired. Everything that happens, every time we have an interaction, social, learning, economic, each time it is a new wiring that takes place in our brains. And that's an important thing that we need to understand. Our neurons wire together and they fire together. We don't pay attention to boring things, which is why the aspect of engagement becomes extremely critical. Why do you think I keep asking questions? Because I need to engage you. Otherwise, you're not going to pay attention if it goes into one boring lecture. So we need to also have the ability to develop our short-term memories. There are tips and tricks as to how we can do that. What they say, how do we know where Noah parked his ark? That's a very interesting science on the science of memories. And then long-term memory and short-term memory, if you see, one is about repeat to remember. Long-term memory is remember to repeat, right? This is all from a book by Dr. John Medina, Brain Rules. So if time permits, you can read it. Sleep, of course, 7 to 8 hours. This is another thing we need to sensitize our kids, that they have complete disrespect for this most important dimension called sleep. While sleeping, our thinking is at overdrive, so we need to give the brain. In fact, there's some very interesting videos that's come out recently from MIT that there's a cleansing process that actually happens in our brains when we're sleeping. It's too good to actually see. So we need to give that time. We need to sensitize our students about this. And then, of course, how do we handle stress? That's a most important criteria in these current challenging times. Stress management, I'll give you some tips later so we can look at that. And then, as rightly pointed out by two of our counselors, stimulating sensory integration. The more sensory the stimulation, the better the brain learns. So that's why we have all these interesting things that are combined, even in marketing experiences, where we're bringing the power of sound, the power of smell, the power of touch, the power of hearing, and the power of visual cues to bring about a total sensory integration. And the most important perception of all the senses is our ability to perceive through vision, which trumps all other senses, because we make sense of the world through our visual perceptions. Yes, the reality biologically, we are hardwired differently, but that doesn't mean one is superior to the other. Recently, I had a privilege to speak in a global conference on women's diversity, where I proved that women and men are equally capable of doing super extraordinary things. Their brains biologically are different for various reasons. The intuitive, empathic brain more profound in women, vis-a-vis the let's say the adventurous part of the brain, which is more towards the hunting and gathering brain of the male. So gender again. The last one is the curiosity, the natural curiosity and the power to explore. And that again needs to be kindled in our education systems. Now, here are a couple of tips which you probably need at a personal level. And definitely you need to share this information with your stakeholders. Of course, your kids, your family, friends, and most importantly, our students and parents. So, to reduce stress and attain success and to thrive in the digital era, we need to protect our brains from the 4 invisible supervillains. I'm going to show them to you. You would know them by now. The digital deluge. There's a flood and flurry. The deluge is a multi-flood, rushing across. And this is again dated, it's 2019. So if you look at 2022, I'm sure the figures are going to be even bigger and more scarier. Digital divide. We know this. So we need to have a discipline in terms of what information, how much time do we spend on the digital contraptions, and how do we discipline our behaviors based on that? The source of information, right? We need to be extremely careful and also pass on that message to our loved ones. Digital distraction. Would you believe me if I tell you that even the ping of your mobile phone, you may be on silent, you may put your mics on silent, but you may have put your mobile on the normal mode. Every ping actually distracts and disturbs your thought process. So a good idea would be to put your mobiles, especially when we're having such intellectual discourses, is to put it on silent mode, not even vibrate, okay, and then put it upside down. One of my TED Talks is about this, how to disconnect to reconnect. That's disconnecting with technology to reconnect with humanity. Otherwise, we would be victims of mass distraction. Right. Third one is digital dementia. That's scary, friends. It's the way we use our technology. It's also to do with our body postures, our body poses. There's a whole science behind it. Our postures directly send signals to the brain. If you have a negative posture like what this young student is having, it's sending negative signals to the brain. The brain at the end of the day functions based on a set of chemicals. For simple understanding, let me call them good chemicals and bad chemicals. The good chemicals are dopamine, oxytocin, serotonin, and endorphins. The bad chemicals, the biggest one is your stress bust, stress chemical that happens. So I think we need to be very careful how we use these phones. In fact, it might be a better idea to even consciously be aware of our postures to know how we use it. And the last one is digital deduction. You ask a little kid, a fourth grader or a third grader, even the basics of basics, he or she is going to directly go to the Google to do it. I think we are losing our power to think critically, to solve problems, and to be creative. That's the bad news. The good news is that we all have an awesome brain that can be trained. I will show that in the next part of my presentation, that can be trained to do what the human brain is capable of. So digital distraction, digital deluge, digital dementia, and digital deduction. Be very, very careful of it. I have a very simple practice that I would encourage all of you to do if possible. For the first 60 to 90 minutes of every single day, I don't touch my technology partner. I leave it upside down on a silent mode. The first thing I do is raise my hands up. There's a science behind it. And I say a prayer of gratitude to God Almighty. I thank God Almighty for another day in my life in these challenging times. And then I continue by saying, this is going to be an awesome day. Some of you may have heard of positive affirmations, law of attraction. Today it's been validated by the laboratories, the neuroscience laboratories at Massachusetts Institute of Technology. I'll share the professor who does it so you will know what we're talking. So it's all a question of perspectives. It's all a question of mindsets. It's all a question of how we look at our circumstances. Are we a complainer? Are we a person who is groaning all the time? Are we making negative sentiments and statements? I think for all of us going through that morass of depression, here is something to uplift us. If we need to see, if we need to know what a thriving person or a student can be, probably this video can be a step in the right direction.
At age 8, I thought that I should commit suicide. Why? I didn't have hope. So I tried to give up. At age 10, I tried to drown myself in 6 inches or 15 centimeters of water in my home. I told my dad I just wanted to relax. Really, I wanted to end my life. I had enough.
But it was so hard because people put me down. And I started believing that I was not good enough. I started believing that I was a failure. That I'd never ever be somebody who people would like or people would accept. I couldn't change my circumstance. I couldn't just one day wake up and say, hey, give me arms and legs, I need arms and legs. And I had questions and no answers, and I asked my mum and dad, why did this happen? I asked doctors, why did this happen? They don't know. There are some things in life that are out of your control that you can't change and you got to live with. The choice that we have though is either to give up or keep on going. So what do you do when you fall down? Get back up. Everybody knows to get back up, because if I start walking, I'm not going to get anywhere. But I tell you, there are some times in life where you fall down. You feel like you don't have the strength to get back up. I'm down here. face down and I have no arms, no legs, it should be impossible for me to get back up, but it's not. You see, I will try 100 times to get up, and if I fail 100 times, if I fail and I give up, do you think that I'm ever going to get up? No. But if I fail, I try again and again and again. For as long as I try, there's always that chance of getting up. Does that make sense? And it's not the end until you've given up. There's still hope. I'm not here today to tell you that I understand your pain. I don't know how it feels to be abused. I don't know how it feels to feel, quote, fat and you've got an eating disorder. I don't know how it feels to have a broken home. I don't know how it feels. I don't know how it feels to have a broken heart. And I know how it feels to be alone. But I just want you to know that it's not the end. It matters how you're going to finish. Are you going to finish strong? You will find that strength to get back up like this.
I think the video said it all. I don't need to elaborate, but just one quick update that currently he's not just the father of 2 kids, he's got 4 amazing kids. In terms of his motivational speaking circuit, while the good times were there, he was able to inspire more than 12 million people. And during the pandemic, he continued to inspire more millions of people across the world. Friends, the message is very simple. I want you to ask yourself a question. If this person, born without arms and legs, could do so much for so many people, the question is, what can you and I do to inspire more people? Right? Think about it. And I think this message needs to go loud and clear to our loved ones, and of course, to our students and parents. So certainly, we need to look at it. You know what? It has a ripple effect, friends. If we start thriving in the mind, which translates into our behaviors, actions, character, destiny, we create a thriving tribe, a community of people who think different. I mean, I can give you one example. One of the countries that we work with is the country of Rwanda. Some of you may know that historically Rwanda was the country with the worst human genocide. These were neighbors, friends, family, and they killed each other because they belonged to 2 different tribes. And within a lapse of just 1.5 to 3 months, more than the official count is about 1.8 million, but a larger number were killed and annihilated by their own neighbors and friends. But guess what? After the country came back together with the new leader, Paul Kagame, forgiveness, compassion, coming together. Today there are no tribes. They don't have the identity called a tribe. It's one particular Rwanda, one Rwanda, which is thriving, which is now the hub of development in Africa. It's a fintech center. It's a high-tech area. Carnegie Mellon has a university campus there. It's really thriving. So it's again a mindset. You move from catastrophe to compassion and creation of a new world. And then once we have thriving tribes, we definitely result in a thriving world. So the real reason is thriving tribes outperform, outlast, and outmaneuver. So how can we create these thriving tribes among our stakeholders, our friends, family, students, and parents? Some tips to thrive. Number 1, so as I said, it's not just survival. We're talking about flourishing. We're talking about growing. We're talking about developing and prospering. Number 1, mindset. Okay, this is so critical, friends, and I'm going to share with you the research. I'll get the team to send you the questionnaire because we won't have time to do it in a face-to-face. We normally do this questionnaire. I'm going to share it with you and you can see that. This is based on cutting-edge research from Dr. Carol Dweck from Stanford. Okay, and what she says is, after you do this simple 5-minute or 7-minute questionnaire, you'll find you're either somebody with a fixed mindset or somebody with a growth mindset. Again, I would strongly recommend every counselor, every teacher to read this. In fact, the latest version has come a few years back, so you might want to read the book called Mindset by Dr. Carol Dweck. And the questionnaire, of course, we will share it. Our team members will share it with you, and you can try it. So there are 4 options that come. A fixed mindset person, a fixed mindset with opportunities or potential for growth, a growth mindset person, or a growth mindset person with some elements of fixing, right? So we try and find out who we are. And so these are some of the characteristics. You can quickly go through them. I'll share a video with you, which will explain the difference between or what it means to have a growth mindset. Just take 30 seconds to look at that. It's all based on cutting-edge research, science by Dr. Dweck, and she has spent the last 4 to 5 decades researching on this. This has not only transformed school kids and college students, it is now transforming organizations. The most recent one was Microsoft. Satya Nadella's transformative interpretation of the mindset and how he made it not just a multi-billion-dollar, in fact, $1 trillion company, but he also changed the culture of the 150,000 strong Microsoft organization. So mindset really works. Just a quick video from Harvard University on this.
The term growth mindset has reached buzzword proportions, and its true meaning has become distorted. Research shows that people who believe their talents can be developed through hard work, good strategies, and input from others have a growth mindset. They tend to achieve more than people with a more fixed mindset. That is, those who believe their talents are innate gifts. When companies embrace a growth mindset, their employees feel more empowered and committed. They also receive greater organizational support for collaboration and innovation. In contrast, people at primarily fixed mindset companies report more cheating and deception among employees, most likely to gain an advantage in the talent race. But people have a limited grasp of growth mindset concepts. Here are 3 common misconceptions. The first is the belief that you already have a growth mindset and always have. People often confuse a growth mindset with being flexible, open-minded, or with having a positive outlook. This is a false growth mindset. Everyone is a mixture of fixed and growth mindsets, and that mixture continually evolves with experience. We must acknowledge that a pure growth mindset doesn't exist to attain the benefits we seek. Another belief is that a growth mindset is just about praising and rewarding effort. But the truth is, outcomes matter. It's critical to reward not just effort, but learning and progress, and to emphasize the processes that yield these things, such as seeking help from others, trying new strategies, and capitalizing on setbacks to move forward effectively. Outcomes follow from deeply engaging in these processes. And third, people think that just espousing a growth mindset will make good things happen. For instance, organizations often think they embody a growth mindset by creating mission statements that include lofty values, like growth, empowerment, or innovation. But they mean little to employees if the company doesn't implement policies to make them real and attainable. Organizations that exhibit a growth mindset encourage appropriate risk-taking. They reward employees for useful lessons learned, even if a project does not meet its original goals. They support collaboration across organizational boundaries rather than competition among employees. They are committed to the growth of every member, not just in words, but in deeds. And they continually reinforce growth mindset values with concrete policies. But even if we correct these misconceptions, it's still not easy to attain a growth mindset, in part because we all have our own fixed mindset triggers. Facing challenges, criticism, and being compared with others can push us into insecurity or defensiveness, a response that inhibits growth. Companies that play the talent game make it tough for people to practice growth mindset thinking and behavior, like collaborating, innovating, seeking feedback, or admitting errors. To stay in a growth zone, we must identify and work with these triggers. It's hard work, but if people and organizations deepen their understanding of growth mindset concepts and the processes for putting them into practice, they'll gain a richer sense of who they are, what they stand for, and how they want to move forward.
Right. So that said it all. As I said, there are 4 variations. It's how we nurture them: collaboration, innovation, learning from failures, and the ability to understand. Right? So it's time for us to rethink, because this is another powerful process. We all have a certain pattern of thinking, but the good news here is that we can rethink ourselves. Again, I'm going to share with you a fascinating research from Dr. Martin Seligman. Martin Seligman, for those of you who may not know him, is the father of positive psychology, or the science of happiness. He works at the University of Pennsylvania, where they have cutting-edge research, which has now developed into a global revolution. But back in the 1980s, he did some very interesting research, a rather disturbing research with dogs. He had dogs caged in cages, and he would give shocks to those dogs. And the doors of those cages would be, unlocked. So the moment the shock is given, the dog would bolt towards the door and then run out. So every time the shock was given, the dog would know that he has to bolt out of the door. Now, version 2 of this experiment, the door is locked. So now the dog is being given shocks. But every time he gives the shock, you realize that the dog is attempting to run away, but realizes he's blocked by the door and he bounces back. Shock, trying to run out, but realizing you can't run out because of the closed door, comes back. Keep doing it repeatedly again and again and again. Now version 3 of the experiment, now the door is kept open. The dog is given the shock. The dog doesn't even bother to rush out, because in his mind, he has thought that I am not going to run out because the door is closed. He has, in other words, learned helplessness. Probably some of us are going through that kind of a challenge. I just can't do it. I'm not the creative person. I'm not the analytical person. I'm not good at this. I'm not good at that. These are false narratives we put into us. Psychology has a term for it called self-fulfilling prophecies. It's the power of belief that you have on yourself, your capabilities, the power of belief that you have on your wards, on your students, on your friends, family. Extremely important. In fact, Nick actually alluded to it. He says, if I believe that I can't, then I can't. But if I believe I can, I can. Again, there's tremendous amount of research on that. So from learned helplessness to learned optimism. Learned optimism. That's the science of positivity. That's the science of happiness. Barbara Fredrickson, Dr. Barbara Fredrickson from the University of Chapel Hill, California, Chapel Hill, runs the Positivity Lab, where she says for every negative thought, we need 3 positive thoughts to erase that negative thought. So it's a continuous process of being conscientiously aware of the kind of thoughts that run into our brains, right? So learned optimism. So from learned helplessness to learned optimism. Next one is the power of neuroplasticity. What is neuroplasticity? The simple function of the human brain to change itself on a regular basis. So there were 2 myths. The first myth was this percentage myth that biology taught us. I wouldn't blame our biology teachers, because that's the limited knowledge they had at that point of time. The second myth they said was our brain is fixed, that's what it does. It doesn't grow after, say, 12 years. It says it grows to almost peak potential when it comes out of the mummy's womb. But after that, it grows and develops probably to 12 years. That's complete myth. The reality is that we have an awesome God-given brain that is much more complex and sophisticated than the most complex supercomputer. The second bigger breakthrough for us is that this brain can change itself. So some of us probably addicted to certain habits. It may not be drugs or drinks as far as counselors and teachers are concerned, but it could be digital addiction. It could be bad habits in terms of oversleeping or overeating. All kinds of these aberrations that can happen. Here's the good news, that thanks to neuroplasticity, you can actually change your brain, as this little video will illustrate.
Not so long ago, many scientists believed that the brain did not change after childhood, that it was hardwired and fixed by the time we became adults. But recent advances in only the last decade now tell us that this is simply not true. The brain can and does change throughout our lives. It is adaptable, like plastic. Hence, neuroscientists call this neuroplasticity. How does neuroplasticity work? If you think of your brain as a dynamic, connected power grid, there are billions of pathways or roads lighting up every time you think, feel, or do something. Some of these roads are well-travelled. These are our habits, our established ways of thinking, feeling, and doing. Every time we think in a certain way, practice a particular task, or feel a specific emotion, we strengthen this road. It becomes easier for our brains to travel this pathway. Say we think about something differently, learn a new task, or choose a different emotion. We start carving out a new road. If we keep travelling that road, our brains begin to use this pathway more, and this new way of thinking, feeling, or doing becomes second nature. The old pathway gets used less and less and weakens. This process of rewiring your brain by forming new connections and weakening old ones is neuroplasticity in action. The good news is that we all have the ability to learn and change by rewiring our brains. If you have ever changed a bad habit or thought about something differently, you have carved a new pathway in your brain and experienced neuroplasticity firsthand. With repeated and directed attention towards your desired change, you can rewire your brain.
So that's the message loud and clear, that we need to realize we need to upgrade our brains rather than the apps on the phones, right? That was Jim Quick, by the way, author of the book Limitless. Next one is the 5-step process: surviving, re-entry, normalizing, exploring, and thriving. We all go through challenges of losing a loved one, strain in a relationship, children going helter-skelter. But then we move from the surviving, re-entry, normalizing, and exploring to thriving. And then we move on to the next one, which is about grit. Grit is nothing but the combination. This is again by Professor Angela Duckworth from the University of Pennsylvania again. Power of passion and perseverance. What happens when you combine your passion? This is another important message we need to give our students, that you have a passion in a particular area when you're trying to counsel them, but you need to persevere. You need to put in that hard work. And what happens? What is the science behind the combination of passion and perseverance? Have a look.
I recently read the book Grit by Angela Duckworth. Angela's a psychologist at the University of Pennsylvania, and she's obsessed with finding out the answer to the question, who's successful and why. She's conducted studies involving national spelling bee champions, elite military training graduates, and top corporate salespeople to determine what was the biggest predictor of their success. She wondered, was it talent or was it effort? Now, our society would have us believe that it would be talent. We have the tendency to marvel at natural talent and overlook the importance of effort. Surveys show that we commend people who put in the effort, but we don't actually believe it can compete with natural talent. We often discount our own abilities when going up against people who have a higher IQ or appear more naturally gifted. But Angela has found the following to be true in study after study. Where talent counts once, effort counts twice. Angela explains this using a simple formula. Talent times effort equals skill, and skill times effort equals achievement. When you apply effort to any base level talent, you get skill. When you apply effort to skill, you get achievement. The science shows that grit, the sustained application of effort towards a long-term goal, is the biggest predictor of lifelong achievement. For some, it's an inconvenient truth. Certain people like to see natural talent and use it as an excuse as to why they would never achieve what those people can, and don't even bother trying in the first place. But for others, it can be liberating, knowing that they're not doomed to mediocrity due to a lack of talent. If they put in the effort, they can achieve great things. Sure, there are some limitations. All of us can't make the NBA. We're not all 6'9". But you could become one of the best players in your local basketball league. By remembering that talent counts once, effort counts twice, we can be hopeful that we can one day become more than we think we can, that we can achieve great things despite not winning the talent lottery. But being gritty is hard. Resisting endless temptations to quit or experiencing failure is extremely difficult to deal with. But Angela says we all have the ability to grow our grit if we direct our focus in 4 specific ways. First, develop a fascination with what you're trying to do. Second, strive to improve each day. Third, remind yourself of the greater purpose. And fourth, adopt a growth mindset. Charles Darwin admitted to not having great quickness of apprehension. To discover the mysteries of natural science without possessing supernatural intelligence, Darwin developed an obsessive fascination and was said to keep questions alive in the back of his mind, questions that related to what he was observing, that drove him to discover the connection between all living things. His deep interest in the natural sciences and constant questioning led him to the breakthrough that we now know as the theory of evolution. So what questions are most intriguing to you? Find the questions that fascinate you, and you'll find the capacity to stay gritty while trying to achieve something great. Next, aim to improve yourself every single day. Compete with who you were yesterday. Olympic gold medal swimmer Rowdy Gaines once said, "At every practice, I would try to beat myself. If my coach gave me 10 100-meter swims one day and asked me to hold it to 1 minute and 15 seconds, the next day he would give me 10 100-meter swims and I would try to hold it to 1 minute and 14 seconds." Angela says that the refrain of all paragons of grit is that whatever it takes, I want to improve. It doesn't matter how excellent they already are. So how can you carve out time each day to push your abilities and seek constant and never-ending improvement? The third way to grow our grit is to remind ourselves of the greater purpose. Angela conducted a survey of 16,000 adult Americans to determine what was a bigger contributor of grit, obtaining a feeling of pleasure or feeling a greater sense of purpose. She found that people on the upper half of her grit scale experienced a similar level of pleasure in what they were doing. But she found that higher levels of purpose directly correlated to higher levels of grit. Angela says, the most gritty people see their ultimate aims as deeply connected to the world beyond themselves. You could be a bricklayer simply laying the bricks for a cathedral, or you could be a bricklayer building the house of God. It's largely up to you to determine what purpose or greater meaning your work has. Whatever you come up with has the capacity to raise your level of grit. The last way to grow your grit is to develop a growth mindset. Bill McNabb, the past CEO of Vanguard, the world's largest provider of mutual funds, interviewed leaders within the organization to see who were successful and who weren't. He found that long-term success was dependent on a core belief. Those who believe that, I can't learn anymore, I am what I am, this is how I do things, routinely failed to move up to a senior level. To be gritty, you need to scrap the theory that your abilities are fixed, because it's simply not true. Neuroscience has shown that we have an enormous capacity to change our brains and learn new skills as we get older. The brain is plastic, and you can mold it through sustained effort and experience. Reflect on a time when you started something new, that you were scared you couldn't learn, but you actually did. Use the memory of that experience to disrupt any beliefs that your abilities are fixed. In the end, Angela says that learning to stick to something is a life skill that we can all develop. By remembering that the science shows that grit matters more than talent, and that we all have the capacity to grow our grit, we can develop the confidence to start taking action despite how untalented we think we are. That was the core message that I gathered from Angela's book.
Right, so you got it. People with grit, do it. 4 dimensions, create the passion, the fascination, marginal daily incremental improvements, ask questions, be curious, right? And then go for it. Talent plus effort. Effort double, talent 1, you get the right kind of output. Resilience, the science of resilience, is all about fighting back and coming back when there is a setback. So it's all about understanding the nitty-gritties of failure and the ability to celebrate failures rather than anguish and set on our failures. What's this?
After being cut from his high school basketball team, he went home, locked himself in his room, and cried. He wasn't able to speak until he was almost 4 years old, and his teachers said he would never amount to much. Was demoted from her job as a news anchor because she wasn't fit for television. fired from a newspaper for lacking imagination and having no original ideas. At age 11, he was cut from his team after being diagnosed with a growth hormone deficiency, which made him smaller in stature than most kids his age. At 30 years old, he was left devastated and depressed after being unceremoniously removed from the company he started. A high school dropout whose personal struggles with drugs and poverty culminated in an unsuccessful suicide attempt. A teacher told him he was too stupid to learn anything and that he should go into a field where he might succeed by virtue of his pleasant personality. Rejected by Decca Recording Studios, who said, "We don't like their sound. They have no future in show business." His first book was rejected by 27 publishers. His fiancée died, failed in business, had a nervous breakdown, and was defeated in 8 elections. If you've never failed, you've never tried anything new.
Right, so that message is loud and clear that we all have the ability. So, earlier, some of you, if you have a background in psychology, will know about post-trauma stress disorder. Now, thanks to the latest findings from neuroscience and positive psychology, we are now talking about PTG, from PTSD to PTG, which is after the trauma, you can still grow, you can still develop because of the innate ability of the human beings to be resilient and fight back. Identifying newer possibilities, increasing our personal strengths, and I've shared enough and more, so I don't need to elaborate. And here's the research, that yes, we were in a state of well-being, then came COVID, that hit us really hard, and while we are bouncing back, the bouncing back goes much beyond our normal levels of well-being. So this is validated today by science, so that's the proof of the pudding. And Jim Rendon, again a researcher in this area, about how he has written new science of post-traumatic growth. So I think it's time for all of us as counselors, teachers, to resolve, as parents, right? Because we also have a responsibility towards our children, as partners, with our life partners, resolve to change our minds. We now know that the science validates we have an awesome brain that can be changed. And through simple tips and techniques, we need to understand our digital discipline, our media discipline, and time not just to reimagine, refresh, restart, revise, and rethink. And all of this is very much possible within the realms of human potential. So time to reimagine who we are, what we are capable of as counselors, as teachers. As I said, we have multiple stakeholders to whom we are responsible. Immediately, of course, to our friends and family, and of course, at a larger level, to our other stakeholders, right? So I leave you with this final video, and then I'll take a few questions if there are any, and we can then call it a day. It's time for us to relaunch our minds, our thoughts, and our feelings.
Instead of jumping out of bed and rushing right into the stress of what you need to do, breathe. Take a moment to eliminate the stress and realign your mind, body, and brain with the joy that does live inside you. You get to choose if your day is going to be like every other day or if it's going to be a great day. And you decide first thing in the morning by giving yourself that time to realign your brain to positivity, to redirect your mind to what is good in your life. What is good in your life right now? Take a moment to think about it.
Start your day with intention. Today, I will be present. Today, I will be kind. Today, I will be the example I expect of others. Today, I will give my all in every moment.
It's all about intention. When you direct your focus to the good, you will see more good. If your focus is directed to the stress and struggle, you will see more stress and struggle.
If you want to be really happy, give thanks. That's the secret. Happy people are grateful people. So spend time in gratitude. Spend time in intention and expectation for what a great day today is going to be. Feed your mind with something positive. Read or listen to something uplifting. Something that will grow your mind or spirit.
You attract your intentions. You attract your beliefs. You attract what you feel. So get up and feel good. When you direct your focus to the good, you will see more good. If your focus is directed to the stress and struggle, you will see more stress and struggle. That is your only job. Get up and get yourself feeling amazing. Ask yourself, how can I feel great today? How can I grow today? How can I make others feel great today? Open your eyes to the magic around you. I guarantee you, you have been missing out on miracles because you have been lost in the stress and noise inside your head. Get out of your head and get into the magic of life.
Today is a new day, a fresh, clean canvas. You can paint whatever you want on that canvas, no matter what happens. You are the artist. Add some color, some joy, some life to your canvas. Leave nothing off that canvas.
As soon as you get up in the morning, ask yourself, what's really important today? Is it important that I rush around stressed at everything I have to get done? Or can I just enjoy this moment? Can I set the tone for the rest of my day? You decide what kind of day you will have, not what happens, but how you will respond to everything that happens. You can respond positively to any situation. Will you respond with presence? Will you see the good? Will you find a way around the obstacles? Will you write your own story, or will life write it for you?
Right on that beautiful note, the power of intention, the power of human beliefs, and the power to make every day a great day. Once we make our days great, we're going to translate that positivity to our community, to our stakeholders. So on that beautiful note, I want to thank you for being here on a lovely Saturday morning to interact and learn from this experience. I hope you found it useful. And if you have any questions, I'll be more than happy to take those questions. Any questions, any feedback, any thoughts? Put them. Thank you, Ms. Shahana, for your lovely appreciation. Anybody else? You can put your thoughts across. What you felt about the session if you have questions. Okay. Ms. Shmita says, thank you. Thank you, ma'am. Tell me what you felt about it. Was it useful? Did you find it useful? Were there any takeaways from this? What are your thoughts? No questions? A lot of thank yous, so that's good. Gratitude, by the way, is a very important dimension of happiness. So when you're grateful for the things around you, appreciation, trust me, your brain is rewiring. So all those of you who put those appreciative words, your brains have already started rewiring. Yeah. So let's stop the share And may I request all of you to probably come on screen for a minute, if you don't mind. You know, we haven't seen each other because you guys had the opportunity to see me, but I'd love to see all of you. So I know the wonderful human beings that I interacted with today. Key takeaways: be stress-free, be grateful, reimagine. Lovely. Thank you, Ms. Megan, for that. All right, so we have only one out, a couple of you. Thank you very much. So I hope this was useful, and you could apply a lot of this. I will share this with the team. So you can certainly share it with your friends, well-wishers, because there's lots of good stuff that you can actually share. Sharing is caring, so please do that. And once again, on behalf of Team SP Jain, my pleasure and privilege to have interacted with all of you. I think the day was wrong. I realized it later. So maybe another time, another day, we might have more people. So thank you once again. No questions, so I presume that you got it all. I will share the presentation so she can share it. Thank you very much. Over to you, Archie.
Yes, sir. On that note, we have come to the end of our workshop. Thank you so much, sir, for your time and for conducting this very insightful and very interesting workshop for the benefit of our larger audience. Thank you so much, sir.
My pleasure.
And thanks to everybody, all the counselors and teachers who have taken out time on a Saturday morning to join us for this workshop. And your participation in this event ensured its success. And we will be sharing all the details, further videos and recordings on this event. And looking forward to hosting you in many more events like these. Thank you so much, everyone.
Thank you and have a great day. God bless. Bye-bye.